The stocks today. It's a sleepy pre-Thanksgiving day, so the markets are a little bit quiet. Tesla's up a little bit. Ooh, Ulta's up 3.37. Rumble down a little bit. Microsoft a little bit down. Not bad. All right, let's see what the comments look like on locals before we get going here. All right, looking good. Looks like it's showtime, huh? Do 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 do. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the highlight of human civilization. But if you'd like to take this experience up to levels that nobody's ever understood with their tiny, shiny human brains, all you need is a cup or a mug or a glass, a tankard, chalice or stein, a canteen, jug or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. Join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better. It's called the simultaneous sip, and it happens now. Go. Oh, that's so good. So good. Well, we got lots of stories, and they're almost all either funny or good news. It's almost Thanksgiving. You don't want any bad news, do you? You want funny stuff and good news. All right, well, here's some good science news. Popular mechanics. Once again, there's another technology breakthrough in a power-dense battery that will give you a 186-mile charge in 5 minutes and change how we drive forever. So that's coming. It's a Taiwan-based EV company, Prologium. It's the world's first solid-state battery with silicon composite anodes. Well, I was waiting for that. Now, the reason I tell you about all these battery technologies is not so you can, follow one company that made a better battery, but rather you can see the frantic pace of development. The world of battery improvement is just crazy now. Here's another one from New Atlas, another fast-charging lithium sulfur battery. So that's cool. Until now, they've suffered from slow charging and discharging, but now they figured out how to make it do all that faster. So there's probably, how many times have I read you a story about a new battery development? Maybe 15 or 20? And I don't know if any one of those will take off and be the next big thing, but if any one of them works, just any one of them, it's going to be huge. And not only that, but I keep telling you about turning CO2 into other products. I'm not so sure that we need to. So there's the separate question is, does climate change require us to figure out how to suck CO2 out of the air and turn it into useful products? I don't know. But it seems to me that every time we can suck something out of the air and sell it, we're going to do it. So I think whether or not climate change makes any difference in terms of carbon capture, if we can economically suck things out of the air like carbon and turn it into fuels, we're going to do it. So here's another one. The Oak Ridge National Laboratory, they've got some improved catalyst that turns greenhouse gases into cleaner fuels and feedstocks. So you can clean it and turn it into all kinds of stuff. So that's coming. You don't need to know the details because they're not important. Just know that there are probably 20 places that they're turning CO2 into products, and probably at least 20 places they're turning batteries, making all new batteries that are better and faster and lighter and faster charging. They don't blow up and all that stuff. Big deals. Not only that, but according to the Sun, the robotic company called Figure Robotics, the founder is Brett Adcock. So the guy who's making humanoid-looking robots that have no genitalia, his name is Adcock. I'm not making that up. Look at his damn robots. They're robots with no genitalia and no pants. I'm not making that up. His name is literally Adcock. Do you think at any time you ever looked at his robot and said, "There's something missing? Something I can't put my finger on it. What is wrong with these robots? They look humanoid, but I feel like I need to add something. Let me look at my license. Oh, I got it. I got it. We need to add a cock." But that's not why I bring it up, even though that would be perfectly sufficient reason. I bring it up because remember I always complain about the slow robots? It's like it doesn't matter if you can train a robot to fold a shirt if it does it like Joe Biden. "Er, er, er, er. If you give me 3 more hours, I will pick up a shirt." Er, er, er. So that was a hilarious demonstration that you can't see on Spotify. But according to Mr. Adcock, these robots are now really fast. They're 400% faster. So let me show you 400% faster than this. It looks a little more like this. 400% faster. It still looks like a robot, but it's definitely faster. 400%. So we're getting there. Well, there's a big study on marijuana and its relationship to obesity. What do you think they found? This will be a test to see if you're as good as I am at determining what the science should tell you. All right, they studied obesity and marijuana use. Who do you think used more marijuana? The obese or the not obese? Go. Da, 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 da. The answer is the people who smoked the most marijuana had the best weight control. Didn't see that coming, did you? Do you know who knew that? Me. Should have just asked. Why is that? Well, it's for a few reasons that I believe I have spoken to you before and written about. Number one, it's what I call the pleasure unit hypothesis. The pleasure unit hypothesis. That if you're a human being, you need to find a certain minimum amount of pleasure every day, or else you might as well just blow your head off because you hate your life. You have to have pleasure to stay alive. Pleasure is not just the little thing that sometimes you hope you can get. If you can't get any of it ever, well, you're going to do something drastic, like become a mass murderer or end your life or something. But you can't really go through life without any pleasure. And pleasure is substitutable. So if, for example, you love to play a sport, but let's say you got some injury, so you couldn't play that sport, but you found another sport, it might be almost as good as the first one. So you can replace one pleasure with another. But here's another thing you can replace: food pleasure. I am convinced that the best way to lose weight is to have other pleasures that don't hurt you, such as enjoying a sport or exercise or something else. One of the most direct substitutes to food pleasure is marijuana, if you didn't know that. Now, it's also true that some people get the munchies, and maybe they'll eat a little more junk food if they have it. But those who are regular users learn that all they have to do is brush their teeth or use mouthwash, and that munchie thing just goes away. The other thing they'll find is that if you're an adult and you want to go to the gym, do you know how much better it is to work out when you're a little bit high? 100% of people who've ever been high will agree with this. Oh, it's way better. It's way better. Better, your brain, your body, everything just works better. And you can exercise in a way that I feel like otherwise you'd say, I'm a little sore, I'm a little tired, I already worked too hard, I can't make it to the gym today. So one of the little secrets of life is that if you see somebody who's unusually in good shape after a certain age, probably half of them use weed to do it. Probably half. It's just not obvious because they don't talk about it. There are other, obviously lots of people don't, maybe the other half. But yeah, it's a big deal. And so I'm not surprised at all that that's true. Um, However, coincidentally, the Drug Enforcement Administration is going to hold a formal hearing. So this is still under Biden. And they're going to have a formal hearing to see if they can reschedule marijuana at the federal level to make it Schedule 3. So that would be less illegal. It would be similar to ketamine and anabolic steroids. I don't know. That feels roughly directionally correct. I don't think it should be illegal, but at least it's directionally correct. And why is this so important? Well, here's what's important. These robots are going to be doing all of your work, and you're not going to have anything to do except either eat or get stoned. If you eat, you'll get unhealthy. If you get high, you'll go to the gym. So we're going to have legal marijuana if we're going to have robots doing all the work. Am I kidding? No, not even a little bit. I'm not sure you'd want to live in a world where robots have all the meaning. We get meaning from work, like our sense of like value and who we are, and did you contribute to the world, and have you done anything that anybody could respect today? It's mostly work. If we don't have to do that same work because the robots are doing all the hard stuff, you're going to need something. You're going to need something. So, joking aside, we probably will be doing a lot of mushrooms and DMT and acid and marijuana. It's my guess. Probably less alcohol because that's bad for you. All right, don't do drugs, kids. Don't do drugs. If you're a kid, you shouldn't do drugs. Anybody under 25, bad idea. It's bad for your brain. Let me say that unambiguously. All right. Did you know, according to SciPost, there's a gut-brain connection? They found that pro-inflammatory bacteria in your gut can change your brain and make you depressed. Who knew that? I did. Because every change in your body changes how you feel, and it changes your depression. And as I've told you probably 100 times without any science, hey, I think inflammation might be the reason that people are getting depressed so much. Here it is. So I've been saying this long before there was any science. To me, it just seemed, how can it be true that inflammation makes your body feel bad? Wouldn't that make your brain feel bad? Wouldn't it make you sad if you felt bad all the time? And of course it does. Of course it does. Every now and then, here's another. I guess I probably shouldn't tell you this in case there's any kids watching. Don't let your kids watch this, okay? Tell your kids to go away. This is not made for children. If you're a certain age, your body hurts every day. Can you verify that in the comments? Let's say people, if you're over 60, we'll pick a random number. If you're over 60, would it be fair to say that something about your body just sort of hurts all the time? You're a little bit stiff, you're a little bit tired, you're a little bit something, right? But every now and then, and here's where I hate to say it, but legal marijuana for adults, not for you kids, not for kids. Sometimes when I don't have much that's hurting and I'm under the influence of marijuana, I'll have moments and sometimes hours in which I don't have pain. And I'm talking about the little pains, just the ordinary pain of life, nothing extraordinary. And I can tell you that I am in almost a blissful happiness whenever my body doesn't hurt. But as soon as something's bugging me, and it doesn't matter what it is, you could have a sore leg or a headache or a sore back or anything, and all of a sudden your whole mood has changed. So this is why I keep telling you, your body is your brain. They're not separate units. Your attitude and all the way you filter all of your experience comes through the pain that comes through your body. So your physical pain is what is completely changing your subjective view of the world. If you don't go hard at getting rid of all your physical discomfort, you're filtering the world through basically depression. So work hard at losing that weight. Don't drink that alcohol. Take a walk after dinner. And for God's sakes, take care of your body because that's your happiness right there. Speaking of that, have I mentioned that it looks like Hulk Hogan might be the presidential fitness person? At least he's been talked about. And I think Sylvester Stallone is also being talked about, maybe both of them, maybe one of them. And I just want to put this idea out there as many times as I can until it happens. Walking is just the best thing the world could do. If you can turn America into a walking country, not walking to work, we don't need the 15-minute cities everywhere instantly, although I like the idea. Just walking, just taking a walk after you eat. If all you did is that, let's say, half of the country said, you know what, let's take a little walk around the house. It doesn't have to be very far. We're talking about like 20 minutes, 20-minute walk. And if you do it after you eat, lowers your blood sugar, which has all kinds of benefits. Maybe you meet your neighbors, wakes you up a little bit, makes you feel like you did something. Walking, change your life. Anyway, so Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, looks like he's been tapped to be the head scientist or the head of the National Institute of Health. Now, you might say, what's so special about that, Scott? He's a highly qualified medical professional in a job that requires somebody like that. Well, did you go through the pandemic? Turns out that the Great Barrington Declaration that was written by the good doctor, Bhattacharya. So he was saying that we should just sort of power through the pandemic, let people get infected, let them get immunity, and it'd be better than the vaccinations. It seems that time seems to have proven most or all of what he said to be right and his critics to be wrong. And now he has the ultimate victory, goes from the guy who was wrong about everything, according to all the professionals who were liars, to the guy who was right about everything, and now he's in charge. Very Trump-like third act kind of situation, wasn't it? I kind of like this just because the movie-like feeling of victory that it has. You know, as much as I liked my own story of being, completely mocked in 2015 for saying Trump was going to win, and then when he does, you go, yeah, there you go. There's your third act story right there. So, congratulations to Dr. Bhattacharya for doing the full third act. He did the whole movie, and I'll expect a lot out of him. Meanwhile, the University of Technology in Sydney says that the ocean stores water in a completely different way than we thought, or additional way than we thought, using some kind of quantum physics that hadn't been completely understood. So when the sun heats the ocean, it stores energy not only as heat, but as hybrid pairs of photons coupled to oscillate water molecules. I mean, you could have just asked me, Scott, is the ocean storing the water just as heat, or is it also storing it as oscillating water molecules? Well, I thought heat was oscillating molecules, but according to this, there's more to it. And here's what I say about that. How many times are we going to find out that there's a major variable that's missing in the climate models, and then we add it in, and then they have to adjust the model again to make sure that it says what it used to say? Would that make you suspicious? That all the assumptions going into the very complex models keep changing, and yet the models keep saying the same thing. Hold on, the inputs change, but then the output stays the same. I don't know what to think about that. It's almost like there's something sketchy going on. I don't know what it could be. Well, Mark Andreessen appeared on the Joe Rogan show and made quite a bit of news. Turns out he's one of the most interesting people in the world, which I knew because I've been following him for a long time. But the rest of the world just found out, I think. So here are some of the things that Mark Andreessen's saying, just for your general entertainment on Joe Rogan. He said, quote, newspapers, and by the way, a lot of this is from I'll tell you in a second. But anyway, he said, quote, newspapers have been scandal sheets forever. He said the first newspaper was a scandal sheet about the Vatican. It was all about scandals with the Pope and the bishops, etc. And here's the part I didn't know. Jefferson and Adams both owned newspapers and would use it to smear each other. Ben Franklin had 15 different sock puppet anonymous accounts and have them argue with each other in his newspaper. We've been in a world of disinformation warfare for a very long time. How many of you knew that during the time of the founders, the newspapers were just completely fake? Now, I knew that, but I didn't know that Jefferson, Adams, and Franklin all owned their own newspaper. Let me see if I can put this together. So 3 of the most famous founders, the ones that we revere today, despite what flaws they might have had, we revere them as gods. Not gods, but you know what I mean. And so their reputations are excellent because the media of the day said that they were awesome, excellent people, except, wait a minute, they were the media of the day. So according to the people who own the newspapers, they're pretty awesome. Is it possible that the founders were a bunch of bastards and the only reason that we revere them is because they all owned newspapers and we didn't know until Mark Andreessen told us? We didn't know that all of our history was fake news written by the people who were in the news, who also owned the newspapers. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you believe that Walter Cronkite was telling you the real news, but we've lost what we had, you think so? Do you think there was a long period where news went from completely fake to, well, we're trying as hard as we can to get this story right, or there's no tricks here, and then went to our current situation of complete propaganda and brainwashing? Do you think it really went through that? I think it went through completely fake and then it just healed itself because there was no reason for it to fix itself. We weren't even complaining. Nobody was complaining. What was the problem? We don't fix problems we don't have, and nobody was saying the newspapers are fake. So, no, we've never had real news. Not only we have never had real news, there's no way it was even possible to have real news because there was nobody in the real news business, nor would it make sense to be in that business because the fake news business pays really well. Or if you're a billionaire, you don't care if it pays well, it just says good things about you. So, yeah, news has always been fake. And all of your history is fake too. But here's some more news that Andreessen made. He said he knows of 30 tech founders who were secretly debanked. What? There were 30 tech founders that at least were prominent enough that they came to the attention of Mark Andreessen, and all of them were debanked. For what? That sounds sketchy, doesn't it? Do you think they were debanked because they supported Harris and Biden? Probably not. I'd certainly like to know a little bit more about why they got debanked. Wouldn't you? Because that sounds pretty suspicious. And then my favorite is that Andreessen says, now it's hard to know if he means this literally or as a recreational belief. You know, I tell you that some things are just fun to believe, but I don't take them too seriously. So Mark says, there have been two major timeline splits in the last 9 months, suggesting that reality, could have gone two different ways and maybe did. He said one was the assassination attempt on Trump. Yup. 1 inch and history would have been really different. So Mark thinks that maybe history split into two timelines, and that unavailable to us is that other timeline that really went poorly. But on top of that, he thinks the election itself might have been a timeline split. Boy, did it feel like it, didn't it? I feel like I woke up in a different reality after the election. Did anybody have that feeling? Like actually that reality had changed? Because there was this whole fake reality, like this theatrical support of Harris and Biden that seemed like theater, and none of it seemed real. And they would say things about how awesome she was, and I'd say, I'm not seeing it. And then she would look drunk, and I'd say, hey, there she is looking drunk again. And people would say, like I wasn't even saying it, or was it like it wasn't real? And then suddenly you wake up and all the Democrats are saying, oh, I guess we got basically everything wrong. And then suddenly my world made perfect sense. I mean, I guess it made sense before. If you were really paying attention, it made sense. But for the people who weren't paying attention, it started to make sense. Wait, are you saying that half of the world was just completely hypnotized and or lying to itself? Yes. Yes, that's exactly what was happening. Half of the world was hypnotized and brainwashed and or lying to itself. That's exactly what was happening. And when you wake up with that realization that now everybody knows it, it's a different reality. I mean, things couldn't be more different than they were a few weeks ago. That's what it feels like to me. So does that mean that we're in a simulation and that the timeline is split? I don't know. But I do know this. Mark Andreessen is on a very short list of people who are going to get a package with a plaid blanket in it. Someday. Maybe. Because there can only be one. Those of you who understood that reference are having a good laugh. Those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about are confused. But someday you won't be. Someday you'll know what that meant. All right. So as you know, Trump talked to the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, and I will never get tired of saying the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum. I just love that. So Claudia Sheinbaum is one of these people who reminds us that there's nothing stopping women from having, any leadership office. Right? There really isn't. It just has to be the right person, and then we vote for them. And that's all it is. That's the whole story. So she ran, people liked her, they voted for her. And what you would think would be the most, patriarchal country you could think of, Mexico. Oh, you're good at your job? Carry on. Everybody likes capability and competence more than they like theater. Everybody does. You just got to prove that you have the stuff. I guess she did, or she had the cartels on her side or something. But it worked. Anyway, she said that the big caravans are stopping. I don't know if that's true or that it's way down. And she said that Trump's, his threat that he'd put a 25% tariff on Mexican imports. But, she would, of course, say that she's already doing stuff to work on that, so he doesn't need to do that. And she asked this question. She said, caravans of migrants no longer reach the border. And I feel like that's true because the news hasn't been focusing on caravans, so they must be way down. Um, she said that they're trying to curb the flow of drugs. I don't believe any of that. Um, but then she said, maybe President Trump doesn't know this. Now, keep in mind that she calls him President Trump. She does not call him President-elect Trump. Now, maybe it was just a slip, but our vice president seems to be drunk in Hawaii, and our real president at the moment seems to be, I don't know, missing or dead or God knows what. So when the president of Mexico talks to Trump and refers to him, she calls him the president. Because for all practical purposes, for her world, he's already the president. So she just uses that term. But she says she wonders if he knows that that most of the people who are coming in now, half of them have a CBP1 appointment. So that means that they have an app on their phone in which they have negotiated with some entity in the United States through the government to have a secure job when they get here. In other words, there's some American entity, a farm, let's say, who says, we'd like a bunch of people to pick our crops. So they use the app, and then a bunch of people sign up, and maybe you can tell something about them from the sign up. And then they show up and they work, and then in theory, they go home when they're done. But you could probably track them. I'm very much in favor of the app. I don't know if the app has reached, the point of usefulness that it needs to get to or not, but I always thought that it needed to be an app. Yeah, I've been saying it for years. We should have an app for the ones who want to be here legally, because if you have an app, you could probably also be tracked. And anybody who would sign up for a legal app, which of course makes their phone trackable, if you would sign up for that and you're really going to work, you're already into the category where I'm likely to trust you. Now, of course, people could abuse the system and a terrorist could come in that way, I suppose, but they could get in anyway. So I like the app, but I don't know what's happening with the migration from other countries, but it does look like Mexico wants to be useful and try to work with Trump. The Vigilant Fox was the account that I wanted to tell you. A lot of today's stories I saw for the first time on X through the Vigilant Fox. So that's a good follow. So I recommend them. The Vigilant Fox. A lot of the independent news that you're not necessarily going to see on the regular news, the good stuff. Anyway, there's some social media influencer, a Democrat called Hassan Piker. Apparently, he's huge in social media for people on the left. I had not heard of him. And then when CNN was asking him, what should the Democrats have done differently? He said, well, I think they need to change their policies. And CNN said, it's a policy thing? And Hassan said, yes, it's 100% a policy thing. And CNN said, well, we'll solve the problem. Well, he said, what will solve the problem is if the Democrat Party actually adopts real left-wing economic populist messaging instead of purposely avoiding that stuff because they're terrified of upsetting their corporate donors. So CNN, who doesn't know why the Democrats lost, went to a young social media influencer who also doesn't know why the Democrats lost. But his theory is that if they'd said more of the things that voters hate, they would have won. Do you think that Americans wanted to hear more populist economic socialist policies? No, that's why they lost. I'm pretty sure that's a big part of why they lost, is all those popular policies. No, they hid their real policies because if they hadn't hid them, they would have lost 90% to 10%. Now, the people on the left who are willing to talk are really, really confused. Have you ever seen anything like this? After 2016, I mocked CNN because they had a list of 14 reasons that Hillary Clinton lost. 14 reasons, which meant the 14 things she did wrong or could have done better or got unlucky. And now Kamala Harris loses. How many reasons have you heard for why she lost? It's about 14, isn't it? It's over 10. It's probably somewhere between 10 and 20 reasons have been given for why she lost. How many times can you lose for 10 to 20 reasons and not be able to correct that? Well, I'll tell you what it really is. What it really is that they can't identify the one or two problems. Like they don't have the skill to know what were the main things. Now, I do think that James Carville does possess that skill. there are a few old timers like Bill Clinton. I think he still has that skill, even at his current age, and also current age Carville. But none of the young people seem to have any of those skills. They seem to not be able to identify what's important or what would be a big lever, where to put your money, what button to push. They seem to be just in random territory. Like they don't understand some basic things about humanity or the country or the average person. It's like they're completely disconnected from some kind of larger reality. How are they going to fix that? I don't think they will. The only thing that would fix the Democrats would be a Trump-like character emerging out of nowhere who was so, what would you call Trump? Well, besides persuasive, maybe that's all it is, persuasive. You would need somebody who had, balls of steel or lady balls of steel. Let's not be sexist. And was completely provocative, wanted to make big changes, and could talk the talk. They don't really have that person. And I would argue that the Republicans would be completely lost without Trump. Have you ever thought of that? What would the Republican Party look like if you took Trump out and you replaced with whoever you think was your second best person for the last 8 years? Well, it wouldn't be winning. You can say that for sure. It wouldn't be winning anything. You would still think the news was real. You would still be trapped in your brainwashing little cone of bullshit. Trump is the one who taught you that everything's not real. It took a showman to tell you were in the show. I'm going to tell you something that happened when I met Trump, because this is my interpretation of it. But when I first met him, he was sending off a funny tweet, and I got to actually watch in real time as he dictated the tweet to Dan Scavino at the time, who was doing the actual physical typing of the tweet. And I got to watch him actually create one from scratch. And then he threw in something like your favorite president. So that the end of the tweet was something like your favorite president, which I always loved when he threw that in there, because he knew it was just to bother the other side. It was just wonderfully tongue in cheek. And then I think I said something about how much I liked when he did his impression of his standard president. Back in the first election, he would go, "I'm not a standard president. Here is a standard president." He would do his physical impression. And so when I first met him, I don't remember what the trigger was, but I said about him that his critics don't understand the show. And my experience was that he locked his eyes onto me and he gave me that, there we go, like you get it. From that moment on, we were totally bonded. Because as soon as I recognized that he brings the show, it's the show. If you don't understand it as a show, then you're lost. Then you think, oh my God, he's Hitler. Nothing makes sense. But if you know that he brings the show and that the show has been, let's say, weaponized to become useful in politics, but also useful for the country, then you understand everything. That he's using the show to make real things work in the real world. And when I demonstrated that I understood the show, boom, connected that moment. It was a kind of a cool moment. But I think that's what the Democrats don't understand at all. That Trump is not just good at what he does, he is historically good at what he does. Like, there might not ever be another one of those. I mean, there might be if you wait long enough, but his ability to penetrate reality, rewrite it. I like to talk about what he did to the Republican Party. He came in as an ex-Democrat who was reviled by basically everybody in the Republican Party as this, outsider, carpetbagger kind of guy trying to elbow his way into power and not having the background and everything that justified it. And then he did it. He actually hollowed out the Republican Party and wears it like a suit. You didn't see that coming, did you? So when you say, what would the Democrats need to do? They would need to have an historically gifted, persuasive Democrat who did not say the same dumbass progressive things that they've been saying so far, because nobody wants to hear it. They would come up with a better message, one that made sense, and then would go sell the heck out of it, and then suddenly all their problems would be solved. They have bad ideas because they have bad leaders, and they have bad communication. Democrats at the moment are actually bad at every element of politics compared to Trump. But also, this is a big key. And I say this a lot, but the Democrats haven't figured this out yet. What Trump built without trying was this army of influential people who were unusually credible. Unusually credible. People who you said to yourself, I don't think that person's lying to me. And they're saying things I'm not hearing on CNN. So, again, this would be everybody from, Elon Musk to the All-In Pod guys to Mike Cernovich, Jack Posobiec. I could keep naming names, but they're an army of independent right-leaning minds rose. They rose out of nothing. And now it's because the internet allowed it, right? But the rise of let's call it almost like a guiding force that Trump uses productively. Meaning that if Trump came up with an idea that all of the, let's say, the top 20 independent voices said was a terrible idea, I think he'd pull it back by the end of the day. What do you think? And I think we've seen it. I can't think of an example, but I think we've seen it, where he floats an idea, and if the smartest people say, no, not so much, it just goes away. But if the smartest people say yes, it doesn't matter what else says no. If the people that he trusts and he knows have been smart in a variety of different situations, and they're all on the same page about whatever it is, he's probably going to push right through that and make that work. Oh, Jenny, keep yelling at me in all capital letters. Is somebody paying you? You look like a paid troll. Somebody wants me to know that solar will never work in all capital letters. I must scream at you, solar will never work. Now, Jenny, do you think I don't understand the concept that things can start as inefficient and later become useful? Jenny, do you know when the current batteries, the lithium batteries, were invented? Do you know when they were invented, Jenny? Yeah, it was in the 80s. They're just getting good. And they're probably a quarter as good as they will be in a few years. So when you say to me, Jenny, solar will never be anything, solar will never work, you're first of all disagreeing with the smartest person you know, Elon Musk. And secondly, you are ignoring that oil technology is largely about the same, give or take fracking, whereas battery technology and solar are improving in leaps and bounds, and there's no chance in the world they won't overtake at least oil. Nuclear power might, beat it forever. I don't know. But no, Jenny, you need to do a little bit better and then stop yelling in all caps and bothering us in the middle of our delightful live stream. So go back, talk to somebody smart, stop taking money from the oil companies, and get back on board. All right. I love more stories about the Democrats being in chaos. So Michael Moore has said that he thinks that Biden's a warmonger, and he can't believe, as many Trump supporters can't believe, that Biden is looking to push as much money out the door for Ukraine's military as possible, instead of just waiting for Trump to wrap it up. Imagine being Michael Moore, and probably at the very top of the things you want to avoid would be nuclear war. And I'm going to give that to Michael Moore. Michael Moore is an interesting character. Like I'm very big on trying to praise the good parts of public figures. I mean, if they have something they're offering of value, I don't want to throw everything else away because there's something I don't like that they said. Let's keep the good parts. Here's the good part. Michael Moore says, why are we letting our lame duck president be a warmonger? Yes, Michael Moore, we agree. Michael Moore, let me ask you this question. Given that Trump already won, and you agree he won, don't you think we'd be better off if Trump just started negotiating now and ended that war? Are we on the same page? I think we are, right? Are we on the same page with Michael Moore? That every penny we give to Ukraine from now on is a waste of money, because both sides have already pretty much conceded that it's time to talk it out. So yes, same page, Michael Moore. So I'm going to give Michael Moore complete credit because he went against his team, the Democrats, and he called out a thing that has always been his top priority. And what they're doing doesn't make sense if you're a Democrat. So full credit to Michael Moore on this specific point. And Jesse Waters, I guess, is reporting. He says there's some rumblings that Bernie Sanders might try to create another party because the Democrats are so bad. I don't think that's going to happen because of his age, and they would probably have him murdered. Democrat strategist James Carville says the Democrats, quote, don't even know where the freaking light switch is. So this is what Carville is becoming one of my favorite guilty pleasures. I do love the directness and the way he chooses his words. He says, quote, people will call me and say, do this or do that, but I'm trying to find the light switch here, dude, and I can't. The wall is blank right now, but we're fooling around in the dark here. That I know. So you can tell that Carville is at least ahead of the crowd, right? So he's admitting he doesn't have the answer, but he knows he doesn't have the answer, and he knows there's no light switch. There's no available answer. So he's way ahead of his Democrat crowd because they think they have the answer. It's like, I think it was that time she didn't go on Joe Rogan. Yeah, that's it. If only Joe Rogan had been better at scheduling, everything would be different. I'm sure they're going to, because the staff is already blaming it on Joe Rogan. That's the latest. They're like, oh, we totally wanted to do it, but Joe Rogan, he was hard to work with. We couldn't get it scheduled. No. So no, only James Carville knows that literally everything is broken on their side. Everything. And so it just keeps getting better. So there's a story that MSNBC, the staff is unhappy because they learned from the news that one of their own, Al Sharpton, one of the major voices on MSNBC, that his quote his charity took $500,000 from Kamala Harris before he gave a softball interview to her on MSNBC. And even the MSNBC people are saying, what the fuck? What? Are you kidding me? I work for a news organization, and one of our news people took $500,000 for his charity before he gave her a puff piece, and we call ourselves news? So it seems to me that, and I think this is funny, there must have been some number of MSNBC employees who thought they were working for a real news organization. Is that funny? Or is it just me? I think it's funny that there were people who worked at MSNBC who didn't know what MSNBC is. If they thought they were working for a news entity, this would really sting. If they knew that it was never meant to be news, it's just propaganda, then does it matter if this guy gets rich off it? I don't care. It doesn't bother me at all. What I want to know is that he took the money. That's all. Just tell me he took the money, and then I have no more questions. Because now I can ignore his interview, because I know it's not a real interview. And apparently no laws were broken. It was disclosed. So if he didn't break any laws, and it tells me what I need to know, I don't need to watch this because it's not real. That's everything I need. I have no complaints whatsoever. But imagine if you were working there and you thought you were working at a legitimate news entity. Oops. Now that's funny. Just funny to think that the employees are finding out what you and I have known forever, that it never was real. Anyway, according to Harry Enton on CNN, one of my favorite characters on CNN, what makes him fun is that when he says stories that are pro-Trump, he says them with the same enthusiasm as if he were doing any other news, which is a lot of enthusiasm. He's great on TV. So watching him not try to hide the fact that there's something in the Trump world that's working out well, while the CNN host is always nervously standing there saying, God, I wish he'd stopped saying good things about Trump. I just imagine that. I don't know if they're really thinking it. Anyway, he says that DEI is sinking in popularity really quickly, and that public interest is collapsing, down 15 points since 2021. But among Republicans, support for DEI has plummeted from 50% to 22%. And even Democrats are less supportive of DEI, with a dip from 86 to 79. Harry? A little message to Harry Enton. I love your work. You're great on TV. But I'm going to put down a hypothesis. When you say that public interest, meaning, I guess, favorability, in DEI is down with Republicans from 50% to 22%, do you think that's because they changed their minds? Harry, do you think that change is because the Republicans changed their minds? Is that why it's down? No, it's because they can say it now. They can say it out loud. That's why it's down. There was no fucking 50% support for DEI among Republicans. Are you crazy? You don't know a single Republican who is in favor of DEI, do you? Do you? I'm asking you right now watching, do any of you know even one, anywhere, Republican who is pro-DEI? No, you don't. You don't even know one. So as great as Harry Enton is, and I think he is genuinely interested in getting the real answer, not the fake answer, I think you have to take into consideration that people just felt comfortable saying it. And there is no 22% among Republicans support for DEI. That's not true. It's zero, and always has been. You're not a Republican if you're in favor of it. You couldn't be. And so basically, you should say there are 22% fake Republicans. That would be closer to the truth. I don't know if DEI is that popular still with Democrats, but I would believe it. Seems believable, right? So one of the tips for spotting bullshit that I often give you is when your direct observations don't match what the science or the poll is telling you, that should mean something. So when the polls were saying it looks like Harris is going to have a good day, but all of my lived experience was the opposite, I said to myself, seems like the scientific part, the polling, is not matching my direct observation. Now, in this case, I went with my direct observation. Turned out that was the right move. Yeah. So anyway, direct observation is probably really going to tell you a lot. All right. Mike Benz is telling us that maybe that fight that Brazil was having with Elon Musk over Starlink may have been not what we thought it was. It looked like they were mad at Elon Musk because of censorship and the X platform, but they were going to take it down on his Starlink just because they could. Well, now we find out that there was a Chinese competitor to Starlink that was trying to get into Brazil at the same time. So was that all about making sure the Chinese competitor got in there? Is Brazil operating under bribes? Did China bribe the Brazilian government to keep Starlink out? I'm going to say probably. I don't have any direct evidence, but probably. Sounds reasonable to me. I mean, if you had to bet on it, you'd probably bet on it. Elon Musk agreed with this thought also from Mark Andreessen on Joe Rogan show. So Andreessen was saying the future wars are all going to be about drones and hypersonic missiles, and that fighter jets piloted by humans would all be destroyed in the first minutes of a war, at least between the most capable countries. Here's why. Whenever you do a simulation where you've got a jet that's driven by AI and a jet that's driven by a human, the AI wins every time because it's smarter and it doesn't have to worry about G-forces or any of those things. So probably our skies will be drained of human pilots fairly quickly, and all future wars are going to look like drones and hypersonic missiles. Now, as somebody smart pointed out, when Putin used his new hypersonic missile, the news reported it as, he could put a nuke on that thing, and then we'd be in real trouble. Somebody smarter pointed out, oh no, it's worse than that. If you think him putting a nuke on his hypersonic missiles that apparently we don't have any way to shoot down, if you think that's the risk, here's the real risk. Those are like rods of steel. They go so high up that all they have to do is come straight down, and the kinetic energy will destroy just about anything. So, meaning if they can make a lot of them, we can't stop a single one of them. So if they made, let's say, 100,000 of them and launched them, whoever their target country is would lose 100,000 large resources, like the whole airport, or like the Pentagon. So if we got into a kinetic war with Putin and he had lots of those things, we don't know how many he has. He doesn't need any nuclear. Nuclear would be stupid, because if it triggered nuclear, then we'd go nuclear, then he'd lose too. But if he just goes kinetic, he just wins. Because, in theory, we don't have something that can counter it. Now, in reality, we would threaten nuclear, right? Because we'd have to. If it looked like we got in a war and we're going to, and his missiles were taking out all of our good stuff and we couldn't do anything of that nature, I think we would threaten nuclear and then work it out. So I'm not worried about Putin starting World War III. And I'll say it as many times as I need to. I completely understand that he's signaling in every way that he might go nuclear. That's just what he's supposed to be doing. If he were not doing that, I would say, oh, he's not a very good leader. He doesn't know the obvious thing he should be doing. But if you watch a leader doing the obvious thing you should be doing and not being crazy, and the obvious things seem to be working for Putin, then any notion that he's crazy or he wants to blow up the world with nuclear power, he's winning. He doesn't need to blow up anything. All he has to do is just keep doing Putin and things are going to work out fine, it looks like. Looks to me. So when you see that people say this is the most dangerous time we've ever been in, I understand what they're saying because Putin is signaling in the most dangerous way he's ever signaled, and the weapons are stronger than they've ever been, and there's an actual hot war. If you just wrote that down on paper, that would sound like the most dangerous situation you've ever been in. I get it. But here's the part that overrides all of that. All he has to do is wait a few weeks and he gets everything he wants. Who would launch a nuclear war if all you had to do is smoke a bong and sit on your couch for 2 weeks and get everything you want? Nobody. Nobody. Not Putin, not anybody. There's literally nobody would launch a nuclear strike under these current conditions. It is the least likely time that anyone would ever go nuclear intentionally. Now, does it create the chance of an accidental nuclear launch? Probably no. And here's why. If I were Putin, and again, remember, he's smart, he's not crazy. If I were Putin, here's what I'd do. I'd go to my nuclear forces and I'd say, here's the deal. I'm going to scare the hell out of the West. But you guys don't fall for anything I'm saying. We are not going to go nuclear. And if I hear that any one of you made a move that makes it look like we're going nuclear, and it didn't come directly from me, I'm going to fucking kill you. Because you are not going to send any signal that I'm not sending, right? I don't want to know that somebody started lighting something up. I don't want to see that something went to DEFCON 2, whatever their version is. If you're Putin, you've called in your nuclear people and you said, you can't make a move. Like, you've got to be the quietest little mouse in the world. And then I would also make sure that my hotline was working. So can somebody test this red phone here? Because if the shit goes down, I want to be on the phone with Biden or Trump right away. So it's possible. I know it's not 100% sure that we're the safest we will ever be in the history of the planet right now. It might be the safest we will ever be or ever have been. Because remember, when the world was primitive, your tribe was going to get overrun by, the Huns or something. So we might be safer than at any time in all of human history, even in the middle of a hot war. So there's that. So according to Jennifer Griffin, Fox News, I guess the U.S. has military bases in the U.K., and those bases are getting surveilled by some kind of drones, and we don't know whose they are. They don't appear to be hobbyist drones, and they're definitely not American. And the British say it's not them. I mean, they're hosting us, and they're hosting us in their bases. It wouldn't make sense for them to be doing it, but they don't know who it is. There's no sense that they're UAPs or anything alien. So presumably they're some other power that knows that they can get away with these drones. I don't know how they can't knock one down and figure out where it came from, but that's the story. So maybe it's fake news. Never know. There's a study. I've been waiting for this one. No, but I should tell you in advance that all data that comes out about the pandemic, none of it's credible for a variety of reasons. So I'm going to tell you a study but at the same and it will be one that you already agree with. So it's a study where you're gonna say, "See, I told you. I knew it." But remember, all the news that was against you before, that was all fake. So don't assume that the news that agrees with you is suddenly magically correct. There is no credibility to anything coming out of the pandemic. Nothing. Not if it agrees with you, not if it doesn't agree with you. Nothing. Now, some of it will be right, but you won't know. You won't have any way to know. So there's a study of unvaccinated Americans. So there were a lot of people who got no vaccinations, not just because of the pandemic. Let me clarify. This is not about the pandemic. These are vaccinations for your whole life. So apparently, there are a number of people who've never been vaccinated, even in childhood. And if you track them down, you can compare their results to regular people. And they say the data is clear. The people who got the most ordinary vaccinations, we're not talking about COVID, not talking about COVID, we're talking about childhood vaccinations, that the people who got the most of them had the most chronic illnesses. Does that make sense? Well, here are the questions I would ask. Number one, what else do these people have in common? If you never got any vaccination, who are you? And where do you live? You're probably kind of off the grid a little bit because you couldn't have gone to public school. So if you took the people who lived off the grid and were so concerned about things that they didn't have any vaccinations, not even childhood vaccinations, what else would you be doing right? Would you be growing your own food? Would you be making sure you got exercise and vitamin D? Would you be just generally more aware of health from more of a hippie organic sense? I don't know. So this is the data I want to believe because I wouldn't be surprised at all if chronic illnesses are coming from some combination of childhood vaccinations. I don't know because I don't believe any data at this point, but it's an interesting one. Well, meanwhile, Kamala Harris appeared for the first time on video. Um, everybody who's commenting on it that I've seen suggests that she seems obviously inebriated. If you haven't seen it, take a look. She seems clearly drunk or on pills or on something. Now, unless that's altered, and I haven't seen any news that says it's altered yet, it could be. So keep on guard. Somebody might tell you it's altered. But if it's not altered, she's obviously inebriated. And are we going to do this thing where this is what I worry about? We're going to do this thing where we act like we're suddenly discovering it. Did you watch me go through a full year of saying she's drunk or inebriated? It's obvious. Why is this not in the news? Why is NBC not mentioning she's obviously drunk? And now that she's not going to be the president, are we going to hear all the insider stories about how she was fiending for a drink and somebody had to give her a pill every day and nobody knew what she was on? You know that's coming, right? Isn't that the most predictable thing in the world? The insiders are going to start dumping on her substance use. Because I think we're at the point where we don't have to wonder if she's inebriated. Are you with me on that? Okay. Do we agree yet that the question, is she inebriated, in a number of these appearances and especially in this video, that feels confirmed. I don't think that's something you have to debate about anymore. Anyway, and then she does her word salad thing where she doesn't look sincere at all. She just looks drunk. And she goes, I have to remind you, don't you ever let anybody take your power from you. You have the same power that you did before November 5th. No, bitch. Trump took your power. You had power. Trump took it. Trump took your power. Shut up. You lost. Yes, somebody can take your power. Trump took it. Try to get it back. See what you can do. Well, it seems that Harris and Biden have both decided to silently quit or do the quiet quitting. In corporate America, that there's that thing where uh, you quit by just not doing the work, but you keep getting paid. Quiet quitting. Weird. There's some really weird drunk people in the comments today. A lot of morning drinkers today. Yeah, anyway, so the quiet quitting has happened, and yet it seems to be fine because it looks like Trump has filled the power vacuum. It seems like the other countries already know they need to talk to Trump. So, and it's a holiday, so nothing's going to happen anyway. So I think they all say, let's just wait for the holidays to be over. We'll be fine. We will be fine. Have you ever heard of the National Endowment for Democracy? The NED? The National Endowment for Democracy. Now, if Mike Benz did not exist, I never would have heard of it. But apparently, back in the old days when the CIA would try to control other countries, and that was sort of bad behavior, and they didn't want to be seen as controlling other countries. So apparently, what they did is they created this National Endowment for Democracy, so that the CIA funds this entity, or the government does, and then through this entity, they give money to groups that are, like, let's say, against the government locally. So basically, you can conquer most countries if you have more money than they do, right? So we can't conquer China by creating dissident groups because China's too powerful. They just wrap them up and kill them all. But if you have a smaller country where maybe their government isn't so coordinated, this National Endowment for Democracy can fund money to all the people who might agree with us and want to overthrow the country, and it's enough. If you can control their news, probably that's all you need. And how expensive would it be to control the news in a small country? Not very hard. It's not hard in our country, so it can't be hard in a small country. So, as Mike Benn says, if I told you the CIA cutout, now CIA cutout means somebody who's doing the work of the CIA, but they're not under any CIA umbrella, right? They're a cutout. So they pretend to be doing some separate mission, but it's really for the benefit of the CIA. So the CIA cutout is currently in the process of trying to sink its censorship fangs into 140 countries. So right now, this National Endowment for Democracy is trying to influence what the citizens in 140 countries are allowed to see on the news and on social media. Wow. On one hand, I'm impressed. I like the fact that I live in a country where our smart people figured out that we can control other countries by controlling the press. I like that because it's, I live in the country that figured that out, and we had the money to do it. So of course we're doing it. Seems to be working out. But here's the problem. In what world do you imagine they're not doing it to us? If they would do this publicly, like it's all disclosed, if they would do this to 140 countries, you think none of this is happening in the United States? And it would be done the same way. It wouldn't be the CIA saying, don't do this. There would be cutouts. There would be cutouts. There would be like a fact-checking cutout or a news-checking cutout. But same process, just like here. Yeah, 141 countries, right? All right, I was reading an article on Tip Insights. That's a website, Tip Insights. It must be somebody named Tip because there's two P's, TIPP Insights, all one word. Anyway, so they were looking at the election results from 2016, 2020, 2024, and trying to figure out, was there any obvious cheating in 2020? Well, now that we have a better idea of how many the total votes there will be, we can see that Trump in 2024 got about 78 million votes. Harris was around 76. Now I'm rounding off to make things simple. But Biden got 81 million. Do you believe that in 2020, Biden got 81 million, but Harris only got 76? Do you believe that? Do you believe that the so-called the districts that are the bellwethers, meaning that whichever way they go, the national election is going to go? And would you believe that Trump won 19 of the 20 bellwethers and somehow lost the election? Which is basically impossible. Now you're going to say to me, Scott, don't fall for that. Those bellwethers are not the same as they used to be because the changing demographics. So yes, maybe these 20 bellwethers did predict in the past, but now that the demographics have changed, probably they never will again. Except, guess what happened in 2024? The bellwethers predicted exactly what would happen again. So the bellwethers worked every year except 2020. Huh. And the most votes we've ever seen for Democrats were for a guy who couldn't walk or talk, and we never saw him. And then when Kamala Harris ran, who is not only Black Vagina Jesus, but was backed by all the same numbers, people, etc. And by then they'd maligned Trump into being an insurrectionist with 34 felonies. So they lawfared Trump out of like crazy. So he's lawfared with all this legal stuff. Then the insurrection stuff on top of it, just nonstop fake news, fake racism news, fake sexism news, just absolutely the worst. And after all of that, she still got fewer votes than he did by a lot. And Biden would have killed him just by staying in the basement. None of this is believable. It's not. And then apparently the polling consistently underperforms for Trump, but not for Harris or Biden. So the polling seems to be consistently accurate for everybody except Trump, who always exceeds the polling. That would suggest that there might be some secret Trump supporters, or that the polling is intentionally rigged, or that the pollsters don't know how to capture that base, or all of those things. So let's see. We've got an unusual number of votes that can't be explained in 2020. We've got 19 out of 20 bellwethers that flipped the wrong direction. And then everything in the news should have buried Trump by that point, but worked the opposite. He did better than he'd done. And then the January 6th committee, they investigated all this stuff, and they never asked the question, why did tens of thousands of Trump supporters gather at the ellipse on that day? Now, that's an interesting question. So you do this January 6th thing to find out, hey, what happened on that January 6th day? And the question that they never looked into was, why did so many people have enough of a problem that they were willing to risk jail to go there and cause trouble? Because they had to know that there was a risk of jail. Maybe it's because they saw what Trump saw, that the numbers looked obviously faked. And of course, there was also that spike in some places just at the right time at the last minute. So I feel at this point, it would be accurate to say that 2020 was rigged and that we don't need to look at it anymore. That to me, that feels like a comfortable fact. I don't know how they did it. Might have been mail-in votes or something else. I don't know. I don't know why it didn't happen again. Maybe because Laura Trump and Whatley did a great job of getting people to watch all the right places. Maybe that's all it took. So, but that's where I'm going to land. So my current opinion is that we have enough evidence now to say with some confidence that 2020 was rigged. And I'm just going to consider that a fact going forward. Most of you are already there, right? And by the way, I wasn't here. I wasn't here until just this week. I was still open to the fact that if the numbers had looked sort of similar to 2020, I probably would have said, all right, we watched everything we could watch, did everything we could do. The numbers were similar. I guess that's what the will of the people was. But now we know. Now we know that 2020 was unusual. And it was unusual enough that it's the only way you could explain the brain dead guy got elected. It's the only way to explain it, really. Anyway, did you know, according to Patrick Ruffini on X, that now that Washington State's done counting, I guess, that every single state, all 50 states, plus DC, swung right. Every state, including District of Columbia, moved further right. Every one. Every one. Now, how many of you remember in 2015 and 16, I was telling the world that Trump is not just persuasive, but the most persuasive person I'd ever seen, and that he was going to change more than politics. He was going to change reality itself. Was I right? Did Trump change how you see reality itself? I think the answer is yes. Because what you think about the fakeness of the news will forever be different. What you think about the integrity of our elections will probably forever be different. What you think about what works and what doesn't work in the real world, probably forever different. Almost every assumption that you had 10 years ago just got a shake hand. Yeah. So I did predict all of it except the loss in 2020, although that just made it a better 3-act story. Well, Sharon Stone has something to say because you know what we need to hear? More from celebrities. So she has a theory about Trump, why Trump won. Quote, it was uneducated Americans who don't travel abroad. So that's the problem. They needed to be listening to Sharon Stone a little bit more. What is happening? The fact that the celebrities even make news for opinions like that, I mean, there's just something so broken about the system. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Well, Sharon Stone, here's what I've got to say about Republicans. There's at least one Republican who's holding a really big secret about you and hasn't told the world. It's not me, by the way. There is a Republican who knows a really big thing about you. And so far, that Republican has not told the world. So you should trust Republicans a little bit more. Anyway, Catherine Herridge says that CBS was sort of slow walking her Hunter Biden laptop stories. There's a lot of details to it, but every time she tried to do something with the laptop story, there was some different form of pushback or hesitation or wait for it. So it does seem that CBS was a not helpful news organization. Well, over in Lebanon and Israel, apparently there's going to be a ceasefire, if it hasn't already started. And I think there's discussion about having a buffer zone where the Lebanese military will be between the borders of the Hezbollah military people in Lebanon and Israel. We'll see if that works. And of course, Hamas says, hey, we want one of those too. Hey, is somebody saying ceasefires? We want a ceasefire. Can we get one too? Well, of course, the situations are different because Hamas has captives. And no ceasefire while you've got captives. If you wanted to have a ceasefire in which you would release all the prisoners, that might be a conversation. But no, you don't get a ceasefire because Hezbollah got one. Well, it doesn't work that way. Indeed, now Israel should be able to move more of its military back to hammer Hamas even harder. So Hamas, you're going to have to come up with something better than a ceasefire offer, because that's not going to happen. And the last thing I would like to tell you is that the reason that false memories exist, I saw a story about false memories and how they form. The reason we have false memories so often is because the simulation doesn't have enough compute power to keep all of our stories straight. Imagine if everybody's history had to be consistent forever. Like every conversation that you had with somebody in a meeting, you would both have the same memory of it forever. That would be a lot of storage. But suppose instead we said, how about we'll do like the large language models do, and we'll hallucinate what could have happened then based on sort of the way things work in the real world. That's what an LLM does. It doesn't know what happened, but it might hallucinate it knows based on things usually go a certain way. So when you look at the number of stories in history where there are multiple interpretations, that has to be that way because we're a simulation. If we were real, there would be no limit to how well you could remember anything. And everybody would have the same story. But the reason we don't have the same story is that we can't live in the same world. It would be too complicated. What we can do is all have our own hallucinations and dreams. And then we can imagine that our version is the real one. And then we look at other people and say, hey, you're so stupid. Your memory is so bad. But probably that's the only way we can stay in business is to make sure we don't need that much memory. So, do you live in a simulation or not? If you don't live in a simulation, how could it be that I'm having so much control over your reality? How could that be? Well, here's what I think. I'm going to give you a little thing to try at home. You ready for this? This will only work for the players, not the NPCs. If you're an NPC, you probably won't even hear this. It'll sound like blah, 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 blah. Try this. When you need something to go a certain way and you don't know where it's going to go, say out loud when you're alone so that other people don't think you're weird. Say this: author mode. Author mode. Just say it out loud. Author mode. And then tell it what you want. Like an affirmation. And you might need to repeat the affirmation a number of times. But once you put yourself into author mode, it'll go in pretty quickly. Now, I've been doing this recently. Again, it's sort of a recreational belief, right? It doesn't have to be true. If it feels good, I'm going to do it. It really does feel like something's happening. Now, you could try admin mode or creator mode. Personally, I like author because I imagine if we were simulations and if there's like a real character in the real world who is now inhabiting me like an avatar, I would not have agreed to put my consciousness in an avatar unless I could program it after the fact, meaning that I could juice it a little bit after I got into it. Now, maybe I would forget, or I would have to learn how to do it. Well, another part of my fun speculation is that you learn how everything works right before you die, and that's the point of the game. The point of the game is to figure out how everything works. And then once you've done it, the game is over. So then you get some kind of natural illness and you just die. So that's fun. Try it, author mode, and then just tell it what you want. I've been doing it every day. All right. I'm not asking for an end to my water problems because I think that's programmed. I think that's part of my purpose. All right, but that's just recreational belief. I'm going to talk to the locals people. Oh, let me give you a little update on tomorrow. So tomorrow is Thanksgiving, right? Tomorrow's Thanksgiving, right? Yeah, it is. Um, most of the people who do what I do will be taking the day off. What will I be doing? Same thing I always do. So I'll be here. Bring the family. I'll try to curse less than usual. I won't even mention marijuana tomorrow, in case the family's listening. And if you want me to give a shout out to anybody who's in the family listening, I'll be looking at the comments tomorrow. If grandma wants a thrill, just tell me to give her a shout out. So we'll be doing the same thing tomorrow. I'm pretty sure I can do a man cave tomorrow too. So we'll do the regular morning show, then we'll do the man cave. Anyway, I'm going to say hi to the locals people separately. Thanks for joining on X and Rumble and YouTube. It's great to see you, even though YouTube probably is throttling me. All right. And